to dissect girls. Did you know I'm utterly insane?
Why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
The blackest dies.
Killing God.
Come on!
To make this pencil.
You're terminated, fucker.
Live or die, man.
Roads? Well, we're going, we don't need roads.
There can be only one.
Kill you all.
Goonies never say die.
We don't need each other. As you can see, I'm not happier.
Are you not entertained?
This is the end, friend.
Happy trails, Hans.
Welcome back to the Skewered Universe podcast. My name is Jeff, and as you heard last time I recorded, I have a special guest on for this episode. This is January is for Giallo. This is the final episode, and we are talking 1987's opera directed by Dario Argento.
2, 1, now.
I'd like to make your debut as Lady Macbeth.
Is this a joke? Macbeth brings bad luck.
Go away! Go away!
Well, ravens are very vindictive. They don't forget.
You just have to watch.
And who better to have on than someone who expressed to me their appreciation for this film, their appreciation for Argento and Giallo. You heard him back when we covered Ernest Scared Stupid on this show. You've heard him on Tales from the Podcast. He's got several other things that you've probably heard him on too. Nasty Nation, all sorts of stuff. We're going to bring him in right now. It's my boy Chuck. How you doing, Chuck?
How's it going, man? I'm doing all right. You doing all right?
Good to hear, man. Good to hear. I'm doing all right too.
Good.
So yeah, you expressed interest in coming on to talk opera. I had it slated, so it kind of just worked out.
Yeah, man. Well, I caught the episode of Tales of the Podcast that you were on not too long ago, and you were mentioning it. So I was like, well, shit, I want to hit him up because I love this kind of shit. It's everything my little gory heart loves.
Same. This was the movie that introduced me to Giallo.
Okay.
I had no idea. I knew about Italian horror because I had seen Suspiria. That was my first introduction to Italian horror, Argento.
Yeah.
A friend of mine just bought the DVD for me on one of my birthdays years ago and goes, "Take this home and watch it. This is yours to keep. You will appreciate it. I guarantee it." Right. And I've been a fan of weird Italian shit ever since.
It kind of gets stuck in you, man. Like, I mean, like it's a style of horror and suspense like no other. It's you kind of always know the tropes of Italian horror and stuff. Just kind of like when you know what you're getting into when you watch a fucking Korean or Japanese horror film. They have their little things about them that besides the overdubbing and all that shit, but they had little things about them that make you realize what exactly you're watching.
Right. And that's one of the things, like you said, it does stick with you. That's one of the things I really appreciated was just their Italian filmmaking is like no other.
Yeah.
Just like you said. So before we dive in, what's like your experience with this movie in particular, and maybe a little bit of your experience with Argento, just to kind of let people know where you're coming from on this?
Well, all right. So Argento came for me about the same time that I got into Fulci.
Okay.
Because it's actually kind of funny. a long time ago, short little story here. A long time ago, I worked at a CVS, or I'm sorry, at a Rite Aid. And there was a regular that would come in that was an ex-girlfriend of a friend of mine. And she had a really bad drinking problem and came in and had a bag full of movies that she was like, hey, do you want to buy any of these? And I was like, sure, and I looked through and there's a bunch of music videos and different, stuff like that. But there was also Zombie
Okay.
from Fulci was in there. And I had just found a copy of Suspiria on VHS.
Oh, nice.
And so I was kind of like, oh shit, okay, because I had heard of Fulci, and I of course I heard of Argento and stuff. But when it came down to me becoming a fan of this style, was the brutality of it, and just how they're really disturbing. I mean, this movie in particular, it's got a pretty disturbing like little idea about it. I mean, it's always okay. Actually, let me back up just real quick. Let me back up. One thing about Italian horror, Giallo, whatever you want to call it, they love poking eyes. They love to put things in eyes that'll make you like squirm.
Yes.
Just to watch. Fulci was real good about that shit. And Argento, about the same. And just about if you go back and watch any other Italian directors like that, somewhere in their filmography, there is going to be one or two, maybe three or four eye penetrating scenes. So that's one of those tropes I was talking about. That's
right.
One of those things you always know you're going to get some eye piercing. But with this one, this was probably what the third or fourth Argento movie I watched when I started getting into it, and it's one that I've always liked. It's not my favorite of them, but I've always enjoyed it. Simple titles for movies and all that kind of catch me off. So just like opera, it's like, okay, well, I gotta check that out. It just sounds like it's interesting.
Right.
So yeah, that's basically like I hadn't watched it in a few years until I rewatched it last night, and it still holds up as a fun one to watch. It takes a special kind of person to watch these movies and enjoy them.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, I just finished it not too long ago before we jumped on here to record, and I hadn't seen it in quite some time, so I kind of completely forgot. Like, I remembered the premise, but I had forgot who actually was the killer, where the story went, and I was just like, oh yeah, this is why I like this so much.
Right, yeah.
Because, I mean, we'll get into it, but the premise alone is like, this is pretty fucked.
Yeah. Yeah, because it really kind of sinks into like the whole stalker thing a little bit, and no, yeah, well, there's a couple other things, but I'll get to that in a few. I figure certain things will be brought up. I don't want to skip too much ahead.
Right. So basically, the premise of opera is there's this young opera singer who is the understudy for a play they're doing Macbeth. The lead in the play that she's the understudy for gets hit by a car, taken out. She's elevated to take over the role, and then she's stalked by a murderer who forces her to watch horrific murders happen to people affiliated with her in the production.
Yeah, that
has been haunting her dreams since she was a young child. That's the very basic synopsis of this film.
Pretty deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a crazy one when you really start watching it.
Oh yeah. And actually one thing I was going to say, since you talk about he makes her watch him kill these people that she knows. It's the way that he goes about it. Puts the needles on the tape, underneath her eyes so she can't close her eyes, and she has to watch. Which that's one thing that I actually love about this movie is just that whole thing, because it's just so demented. And actually, what's kind of funny about that is that whole thing was actually started out as a joke from Argento.
Right.
Because he had said that he had made a joke to somebody saying that he really hates it, like, when people turn away when they're watching the movie at the gory parts and all that stuff. And it was like, if I just could figure out some way to put, get their eyes, keep their eyes open. And it's like, man, if you're gonna do it, I mean, a bunch of needles. That's one way to make somebody keep their eyes open.
Yeah, and
yeah,
I remember the first time I was just like, oh no, and even against that, I was like, it's unsettling. But it's not only the fact that you see the needles are so close to the eye. It's the fact that every time she starts to blink and pulls her eyelids back, there's just little droplets of blood moving down the needles.
Yeah.
Which just that little bit shows you, like, oh, she's not walking away unscathed. She's still she's trying to blink and shut her eyes to not see, but she can't, and she's getting injured every time she tries. Yeah. It's like, oh, it's so twisted.
It really is. And then something else about this movie and a lot of Argento's films is the fact that most of the time when you see a killer with black gloves on in any of his movies, it's actually him doing the killings. Mm-hmm. He most notably, he has killed his daughter in a few movies that she's been in that way. Where it has like the POV, of the killer. If he's wearing black gloves, it's most likely him. And I'm pretty sure it was the same case for this one too. So,
I wouldn't be surprised if it was.
Yeah. But no, the shot, the way that it's shot, in the killing scenes, is something I always enjoy too. How he kind of puts the camera, he makes it look like you're seeing out of her eye with the needle sticking up and all that shit.
Yeah.
And him just standing there mocking her while he does all this shit. Like it's I don't know. That's one thing I love about Argento is his style. Is some of his shots are so bizarre, and they're just, I don't know, they're thought provoking in a lot of ways. A lot of times he focuses on colors and and the soundtrack usually. Like that's one thing that I gotta say, because talking about Fulci and Argento is Argento was always the one that had the more vibrant colors in most of his movies, and he shot it a different way where it was like artistic, you know what I mean? Like artistic deaths and all that stuff. And Fulci was just like, kill the bitch. Let's just figure out the nastiest way we can do this and really fuck some people's heads up.
Fulci to me was always a more visceral, realistic feel in a way, and Argento was the vibrant colors, the more surreal side.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
Especially you look at something like Suspiria, not so much with opera. I mean, there's still the crazy color palette in certain things, but Suspiria for me is like Argento just dialing up that surreal factor. And because each scene is lit a different color every time. Certain things, this one is still beautifully shot, but there's those things that are typically Argento, like you said, and we're getting dual POV. We're getting POV of our main character Betty as she's tied up, watching through the needles on her eyes, watching the murders happen, and then we're getting the POV, of course, of the killer themselves. So
which is great. I mean, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen another movie really do that. We've seen the POV shot of the killer so many times. I mean, but to get the POV of the person who's being forced to watch the murders.
Yeah.
I haven't seen too many films that do that except for this one.
I'm trying to think of anyone that I could think of that do that.
And off the top of my head, I'm not. There's probably some out there, and I just can't think of any right now. But this was the first one I saw do it.
It's the only one that's coming to mind at the moment. I'm sure. I mean, hell, unless you just. Yeah, because the other ones I'm thinking of, I'm pretty sure there's a couple other Argento movies that do that too. So yeah, Argento's the man at that shit.
Yeah. I mean, and even the first person shots of like going down the stairways in that stairwell, they had that really curvy stairwell, and some of the POV shots of the killer going up and down stairs. It was just really, it still had a surreal feel to it, not as extreme as Suspiria, but it was almost like floating up and down these stairs and down this staircase. You weren't getting the motion of steps.
Right.
It was kind of off-putting, like, oh, is this gonna be some supernatural thing, or is it just he's doing it like, I'm gonna keep you unsettled throughout this entire film because that's what I do, which is probably what he was doing.
Yeah. Argento, man, that's one thing about him is most of the time, of course, he's got movies that are supernatural as well as just the usual serial killer thing. But most of the time, honestly, if you actually look at a lot of his movies, I mean, he kind of sticks with the killer vibe. You know what I mean? He usually has, like it's usually it's usually a killer in black gloves, obviously, we talked about earlier, and usually going after some poor female that doesn't deserve it.
Right. Yeah, some innocent female who just happens to catch their eye, and they're like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna torture you. I'm gonna stalk you."
Like, let me see here real quick, because I've got the laptop pulled up, so I'm just kind of curious about a couple of things. Let's see, because you got, let's see, Suspiria, which is supernatural and killer, a little bit of both.
Right.
Inferno. That one I think was supernatural.
I believe so, because isn't it? I believe it's Suspiria, Inferno, and is it Tenebrae? Are the
Tenebrae? Yeah.
Those are all tied in together. The three mothers and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's.
I haven't seen them yet, but I know the lore behind everything. I'm working my way through them.
Well, then you got like Demon and Demon 2 and all that shit, but then you like, Trauma, and there's so many other ones. But he usually sticks with the serial killer thing, which is fine, but like when he does a supernatural demonic possession type thing or whatever, he usually owns it too,
Yeah. And on a side note, you mentioned demons. I fucking love demons.
Yeah, that Demons is an interesting one. It's a fun one.
Yeah, I showed it to Leia.
It's not for everybody.
Yeah, I showed it to Leia a while back, and she was like, "This is awesome." She hated the chauvinistic males, which I was like, "Yeah, you're supposed to.
Yeah,
you're not really supposed to like anyone in this film. You're just supposed to be like, this is crazy. Let's go for it."
Well, let's also be honest. It's an Argento film.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
And that's Argento, Fulci, Bava, like all those guys, man. Usually there is some kind of sexism looming its head around somewhere,
Oh yeah,
chauvinist pigs and shit like that. Yeah, that's just one of those things that you just if you know, you get into,
Exactly. If you can set aside like how bad that is now for its behavior that way, just be like, okay, this is how different culture, different way of thinking. I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not condoning the actions the way it is, but from an artistic standpoint, I understand why characters are written that way. So
exactly, and a lot of people fucking forget that. I mean, they these days, I mean, some of these movies they wouldn't be able to be made these days. Not here in the States.
No,
not released in the States anywhere. Because I mean, there is so much shit going on, whatever, woke culture and all that, cancel culture. Mm-hmm. People sometimes forget that, because I was watching an interview with a splatterpunk novelist named Edward Lee,
mm-hmm.
and he's become a really big influence on me lately in writing, and he does a lot of stuff like Germany puts out like a lot of his books and stuff, but he was talking about how I can't remember what book it was that he was talking about, but there was a lot of people getting mad because some of the characters were, racist or sexist or whatever the fuck. And he's like, I don't feel this way, but like these characters, like I'm writing in these grimy, shitty fucking people. Like, it's their characters. They get theirs. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think people forget that a lot of times. It's like, whatever you're reading or watching, Like, come on. Like, it's not from the director's point of view, like of those kind of views. Most, usually,
Yeah.
but at least that we know of. Okay.
Right.
But
It's like, I've never heard anything bad about Stephen King calling people out, but I've read it, and there are very racist rants throughout the course of that story.
well, and that's also
it's
because
set in
that's
the
the time period.
50s. Yeah, it's set in the 50s. This was unfortunately commonplace at the time for this kind of hate speech to go on.
Yeah.
But if somebody didn't realize that, picked up that book today and read it, they might be like, oh, we got to cancel him because he's a racist. It's like, no, it's a depiction of life at the time. It's letting you know how these characters are, why this certain group came together, why this guy is the way he is, and what's going to happen.
That's one of It is actually one of those books that Stephen King does not remember writing much of. Back when he was drinking and drugging, and in all honesty, when it comes down to like people getting up in arms about like possibly getting up in arms with that book, there's a whole lot more in that book that's a little worrisome than just the racism and shit like that. But we won't.
Yeah,
we won't go into that.
Yeah, which is and I know what you're talking about, and I'm glad there has been no interpretation of that on film ever.
There was a whole lot of talk when that first movie came out. They were afraid that was going to happen. And everybody was going, "Oh, don't!" And they did.
I had a feeling. I was like, "No, there's no way they're gonna do that. If they even try, this thing's gonna get shut down so fast."
Yeah, impossible. Yeah,
it's like the only way you could possibly even would be some sort of graphic novel, but you would have to really dance around it. But anyway, we veered off.
Well,
it's
also
completely
real
fine.
quick,
it's still within what we're talking about. So,
well, also kind of rearing off, but also kind of on the same topic. Talking about Fulci again. One movie I think you talked about not too long ago that could actually very easily been an Argento film is New York Ripper.
Oh, definitely.
And that movie, I mean, talk about a movie that couldn't be made today.
Oh, there's no fucking way.
That's one of those movies that if somebody doesn't know about Fulci, you don't just play that one for them first.
No,
I made that mistake once. But.
See, I went into the New York Ripper having already seen The Beyond, having already seen Zombie, so I was like, I knew what I was getting into.
Yeah.
So I already knew what Fulci's track record was.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, those two films are like, even those two, you don't. Maybe Zombie, you could kind of show. The Beyond, you don't want to show anybody right away because they'll be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Kind of like New York Ripper. They'll be like, "Why are you showing me this?"
Which I have to correct myself real quick. I got fucked up earlier thinking about it. Actually, The Beyond was the first time that I got into Italian stuff because it was I bought it when I was like 13 at a Meijer on a Halloween. It was a $5 movie. You know how they'll put out these like 4 or 5 movies on one or whatever. And this one was by itself, but it was called The Seven Doors of Death. Yep. And when I was younger, I just loved this movie. I just thought it was gory. It was kind of creepy. It was, it was pretty cool. And when I got older and then finding out that it's The Beyond and then, Zombie came along and Suspiria around the same time. So just want to correct myself real quick. I don't know why I didn't. Yeah, but yeah, there's that.
All good, man. All good. Hey, sometimes it's hard to keep track, and then with something like The Beyond, because it has like 5 or 6 different titles depending on where you're looking.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, which a lot of these do.
Yeah.
A lot of these do.
I think Opera has another name that I didn't know about. I don't have it right in front of me, but I was like, oh, because I was looking up images, to put together, and
it was released as Terror at the Opera.
Yes,
originally.
Thank you. That was it. Terror at the Opera.
Yeah.
I was like, huh.
So much better just being called Opera, I think.
Yeah. I was like, I don't like that title.
Right. Yeah. A lot of times, different titles come about because they know in certain countries, what will spark somebody to want to go see something if they put something in the title. They've done that with so many movies throughout time. And so like with Opera and a lot of the Italian movies, they had to change it up because in all honesty, like I would say that if you put a movie out called Terror at the Opera and it comes out today, like, yeah, people are probably gonna like go see it. But if you put out a movie that's called Opera, and it's a horror film, like that right there, the simpler the better. You know what I mean?
Right.
It kind of sparks ideas in the mind before you even watch it, just based on the title sometimes.
Yeah. Well, sometimes, and don't get me wrong, sometimes a title that's, I don't want to say long, but has a few more words to it, you're like, wait, what is that? It kind of goes, you kind of go, I wonder what that's about.
Yeah.
And then you realize, oh, it's a horror movie, but something that's just like, this is horror, it's called Opera. Strap in. You're like, oh yeah. Single word titles for me always seem to work a little better. So I'm like, huh.
Yeah,
right.
one or two. That's it's like Seven Doors of Death and The Beyond. You know what I mean? Like The Beyond is such just a better title than Seven Doors of Death. Right. But when you're like 12, 13 years old and you buy a movie called Seven Doors of Death, you have to show it to all your friends.
Yeah. And Seven Doors of Death to me works on two levels. One, you could be like, oh, this is some kind of weird horror movie probably. Or you're like, this is going to be some weird English dubbed kung fu movie that I never knew existed. Because that title kind of works as a kung fu title as well, which is really weird.
Yeah, I've never thought about that before, but yeah, you're right about that.
Just when you said it, I'm thinking about it, I'm like, huh.
Sounds like some Wu-Tang shit or something,
Yeah, like definitely it would be like some Shaw Brothers thing that somebody would randomly find. Like, oh, it's this lost film, Seven Doors of Death. Like, what?
Right, yeah, exactly.
But back to this, I don't want to run through like the entire movie going like scene by scene, things like that. I basically just want to talk about what are some cool things we like. We're going to spoil this anyway. We're going to spoil the shit out of this one because it's 87. And look, if you listening out there haven't seen this, stop, go to Shudder and put it on.
Yeah.
Come back after you've watched it.
Great.
And actually the release on Shudder, the print they have, it's beautiful. It is, I don't know who restored it, but it is so crisp.
Oh, I know.
Like I didn't expect
Shudder's
that,
really good about that shit. Yeah.
I was like, wow, okay. Because the last movie I watched for this, Black Belly of the Tarantula, the one that I just recorded an episode on, that the print was okay. That was from 71, and it was decently restored. But man, I know there's 16 years in between. But typically a VHS print takes, sometimes you don't get such a clean transfer. You get something that looks great, but I didn't even see any like film degradation or any noise in the transfer. So whoever did it, spot on, man. It looks beautiful.
I don't know if I've ever seen Black Belly of Tarantula. It's Cavara, right?
Yeah, Cavara.
Yeah, okay. Pablo Cavara. Yeah, I've heard of it, but I've never seen it yet.
I hadn't heard of it. I just was going on Shudder. I was going between Shudder and Screambox and sourcing stuff for this month that I wanted to do because I've been wanting to do Giallo for so long. And I knew I had to do opera. It was my introduction before I even knew Giallo was its own separate genre. And then I found Black Belly of the Tarantula, New York Ripper, and all this other stuff that I just loaded into my Shudder and my Screambox playlists. I'm like, eventually I'm watching every one of these.
The door has been opened.
Yeah, even if they're bad, I want to watch it so I have the ability to speak on it if somebody comes like, oh, you should watch this, and be like, I did, that one sucks. Here's a better one. Try watching this one,
Exactly. I mean, like, that's the thing is like not all of them are that great. Some of them are like, oh, this is really good, and some are like, that's watchable. And some you're like, I can't watch all this.
Yeah, like I enjoyed Black Belly of the Tarantula. Some people may not. It moves a little bit slower than most Giallos, and it's a little more on the like police procedural slasher side than the just the slasher doing messed up, sexploitation, exploitation side. It was a little more reserved, but I still liked it. It still worked for me. It may not be for everybody, but for me, I really enjoyed it.
I feel the same way, man. Just like going back to New York Ripper, like that is not a Fulci film that's not one that a lot of my friends that like Fulci really like that much. It's goofy. I mean, a killer who talks like fucking Donald Duck. Like, I don't know what kind of medication Fulci was on, but he thought that was a good idea. Yeah, but it makes the killer something unique. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So,
You don't expect it.
right. Yeah.
And that one was a tough one for me to try to describe how I felt, because I said a couple of times it was fun to watch, and I'm like, okay, this isn't a fun movie. It was fun to watch as in I didn't know where it was going. I couldn't predict who the killer was.
Right.
Simply because I was watching it just for the first time and just taking it in. I'm like, I just want to take this in. I'm not going to try and guess. I'm not going to break it down as I'm watching it. I just want to watch this with fresh eyes and take it in for what it is. And
it's a very disturbing film.
Oh yeah. I mean, the amount of explicit sexual things going on in the New York Ripper.
Oh my God. I'll just go ahead and just and throw it out there. One of the most disturbing scenes, and it's not even one of the scenes where anyone dies. It's the under the table scene, and that's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. I was not. I was uncomfortable watching that. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Well, I had somewhat of a date one night, and I thought it'd be a good idea to put that one on, not thinking. And she was kind of screaming for me to change the movie, and I was like, "Yeah, you're probably right. I didn't even think about that. My bad. I think I was just trying to find something somewhat like sexual to get the mood going, not the one to go with."
Yeah,
yeah.
You know, and if it ends up being the one to go with, you seriously got to question what's going through that person's mind.
Then that's when I go, should I marry this person? Because that's the Chuck Nasty nature.
You know, if you find the one, if she gets through that scene and looks at you with lust in her eyes, put a ring on it.
Yeah, just not using my feet for nothing. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's funny that oh shit. It's funny when I was reading up on the New York Ripper, not to keep sidetracking off of opera, but
right, yeah.
The censorship that happened was on different scenes that depicted the murder. That was fine. They're like, oh, that's fine. They're like, you know, that scene, yeah, we don't need to cut anything of that. But this razor blade murder towards the end, yeah, you're going to have to trim that down. I was like, seems like some odd cuts, but okay.
Well, again, you know, that goes along with the Italian, you know, mindset with some things, you know, and it also goes down to, you know, what people want to see, that kind of thing. But yeah, let's go back to opera because I told you I'm a bigger Fulci fan than I am Argento fan, and we could talk about him all night long. But I also love Argento too, so just, you know. But yeah,
same.
One thing about opera that is just some of the death scenes. You know, the fact that the scene where the main girl is she's hanging out in backstage, and there's some prop issues or clothing issues, and the girl finds the bracelet or the necklace or whatever it was, and she sees that old girl's all like, you know, got the tape and the needles in her eye, and she's like, what the hell? And Duder comes at her, and it's a really weird scene because she gets away from him and he throws a fucking iron at her.
Yeah,
and hits her in the back.
Old school iron. Oof.
Yeah, which I mean, like, you know, old school heavy iron like that's gonna hurt like a son of a bitch. But like, the acting is so wonderful in this. But like, she falls down and then just acts like she's paralyzed. I mean, he did hit her in the middle of the back. I don't know, but
what's funny is there's a weird cut in that she gets hit and goes, and like grabs her back and like takes 2 steps, and then it cuts, and the next thing she's flat on the floor. I'm like, we didn't see her fall. How did she get down there?
Right? Yeah.
Like, did she just fall over immediately? We didn't see. It was a weird cut, but
yeah, and you know, she can tell the killer wants the necklace. Is it a necklace or a bracelet?
I think it's a bracelet.
I think it is a bracelet. It's got like one of those. Yeah, I think it is a bracelet. So she thinks she's got one over on him, throws it in her fucking mouth and swallows it. And he ends up, which you don't really see it, but sometimes that's actually okay. but
Yeah.
he's cutting open her throat and he takes out the bracelet. Which, I mean, in a weird way, in a weird fucked up way, I wish they would have shown that.
Yeah.
But like the sounds in that, when he's like, he's like going through, you're like, what the fuck? Because at first I was like, he's like, is he cutting through her chest plate? Like, and it's just like he's just cutting right through, like, right underneath her neck and like up, basically. Yeah, and that's a pretty rough scene.
The sound design. The sound design in that, just that you hear the crunching and the squishing and the tearing as he's using those big ass shears for cutting fabric. Just these big heavy duty and just going in. And I was just like, I was sitting there watching it, I'm like, oh, this is messed up, but okay, when are they gonna show it? And they never did, and I was like, okay, you know what? You're getting away with this one because the sound was so gross and intense.
Yeah.
My mind made it a lot worse than what you would probably be able to show me.
Truth. That's what I was kind of saying is like sometimes if you got the noises where like another movie that actually does has a scene that comes to mind with that is the remake of Night of the Living Dead. Where Ben, Tony Todd's character, is first introduced and he goes out and he says, God damn you, God damn all of you. And you don't see him, you don't see him actually stabbing the zombie, but you see him slam down the crowbar and you hear it like, so like your mind is already kind of like already got it. You're already seeing it in your head. So you don't really need them to show you. And then that's one of those scenes too, that, like you said, my mind was already a lot nastier than it probably could have been.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that scene because I do, as much as I love the original Night of the Living Dead, I equally love the remake.
It's one of the best. It's one of the best remakes. It really fucking is.
It's just,
we talk about it on Graveyard Talk a lot. It comes up constantly.
Yeah, it does so much to pay homage to the original, but yet it's its own thing because Barbara isn't just some weak woman who's cowering the entire time.
No, she is a badass bitch.
Oh yeah. And when she turns around and drops fucking shit, what's Harry on the stairwell, she just turns and goes, pops him right in the head and goes, oh yeah, there was another one.
Oh yeah, Cooper.
Yeah, Cooper.
You came back. You came back. Yeah. I love that fucking movie. I do love that movie. But that scene in Opera, that was one of those. And you go a little bit earlier on, and the love interest for a split second at the beginning of it. Who was actually played by a guy, I can't remember what his name is, but what I know him from is the Ice-T, Rutger Hauer, Gary Busey film Surviving the Game.
Are you kidding me? Okay.
He plays the son of he's an older actor who was also he was in Scarface and Last Action Hero and a bunch of different movies. He always plays a bad guy. But he played his son in that movie. And that's why I was like, oh shit, it's that guy. Because that's what I do. When I watch a movie, if I recognize somebody, I point it out, even if I'm by myself. And I didn't realize he had an accent either until watching this. But he gets they don't shy away from seeing him get slaughtered.
No, not at all.
No.
I mean, you see the knife go into his throat, up through his mouth, and they close up on the mouth so you can see the tip moving around. It's like, oh, all right. Okay, thanks, Argento. Oh.
Yeah. Something else too. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, man. That's fine.
I get excited talking about this shit. But something else that we have to mention when it comes down to this, I'm going to get back to some of the death scenes too, but something to do with the death scenes is the music. Because this movie is very like, somber and some of the music in certain scenes is almost too happy sounding in certain parts.
Yeah.
And then when you get to like, all right, she's got, Duder's got the nail or the needles under her eyes, and he's getting ready to kill somebody, and then you start hearing that heavy 80s glam rock music playing, and I'm like, God. And the thing is, I'll tell you what, every time that music came on, because it's very fast, whatever the fuck, I was thinking, you know what would have been even better of a band to put on for those scenes? Fucking Motorhead.
Oh,
they should have had Motorhead's Killed by Death every time. Killed by Death. Come on, think about that for a second. Every time, like, watch that movie again, and every time somebody like gets killed, just put on Killed by Death by Motorhead. It's gonna work out fine every time, guaranteed. Long live Lemmy.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I understand that, because it was so different, because a lot of the scenes are either scored, like you said, very happily, kind of, I don't want to say whimsical, but operatic, I guess would be appropriate. Some scenes are just silent.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing. And then there's a couple of scenes that are scored strictly by the sound of ravens.
Yes.
And then when you get that, like you said, glam rock sort of, semi-metal soundtrack for The Killer, it's like, wait, what happened? But I did enjoy it. It threw me off, but I did enjoy it.
Oh yeah, I thought it was great they did that. I mean, because when you again, you take a movie that has, these whimsical, type operatic, like, music, score in the background, whatever, and then shit's getting ready to happen. Like, like I forgot about that when I was watching this last night. I don't know how, but it slipped my mind. And when the first kill happened, and which I think it was old dude, I'm pretty sure it was. Wasn't like the first kill, the like the boyfriend guy or whatever yeah. And when that came on, I was like, oh shit, yeah, that's right. I think it's perfect. I think that was that. There's no other way they could have done that with the score on that moment. I think it was great.
Yeah, I think once you get to the end of the film and you realize that it's sort of chaotic and jarring, it ties into the character that is the killer, because they're very chaotic once you understand. They're not all there. So that chaotic energy definitely fits with that music change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And speaking of the score's done by Goblin. Goblin and Argento go hand in hand, basically.
I was getting there. Yeah. Goblin is, well, their whole career has been pretty much, I don't really know much about them before they started doing the whole score and movies thing. But they definitely became a staple in a lot of Argento's movies.
Yeah.
And a few other movies. They were on tour a couple of years back. They came around. They were in Kentucky at one point, and I was so bummed I didn't get to go see them, because I had a few people I knew that went. Yeah, because I think they actually, like, I could be wrong, but part of me says that they played in Lexington, which is about 20, 30 minutes away from here.
Oh, wow.
About 30, 40 minutes away, yeah. At a place that I've played a couple of times, and
nice.
I didn't get to go. I didn't get to see it, and that still bums me out, man, because that'd be one of those experiences where you might eat a couple of handfuls of portobellos, and maybe take a few bong hits, what bong hits, and just enjoy it, because I just like John Carpenter touring, doing his music stuff, like, dude, equal excitement, and two things that I will probably never get to see live, and that saddens me.
Yeah, I've been wanting to see Carpenter for so long, and I've kind of set it as a goal that if he ever comes around here again and I can get the tickets to go, I'm gonna fucking go. But if Goblin were to ever do it, because I know Goblin for a long time wasn't doing anything, because I think they had like disbanded for a while.
Yeah.
And then sort of came back together and started doing that tour, and I remember hearing about that. And my knowledge of Goblin only goes from what they've done with Argento in certain films. It's why I have a playlist that I listen to every fall, starting right towards the end of September. And it's got the scores from like Tenebrae and all that. So Profondo Rosso plays every fall for me. And I'm like, yeah, and all the Goblin stuff from those Argento films just plays. And I'm like, this is getting me right in the mood for what I need this time of year.
Well, let's, I've got it pulled up here. So real quick, I'm going to read off, some of the films that Goblin has scored. Let's see. Roller, I'm not sure about that. Suspiria, Martin, The Heroin Busters, Bloodstained Shadow, Zombie, Patrick, let's see, Beyond the Darkness, St. Helens, Tenebrae, Tenebrae, how do you say it? Hell of the Living Dead, Phenomena, The Church, which those are both Argento. Well, okay. Phenomena is Argento, but The Church, which I thought it was Argento, maybe he just produced it because it says Michelle Savi. I don't know, but Sleepless, that's Argento.
So, yeah. I think Argento was behind like getting The Church released, so like as a producer and like distribution manager or something like that. Yeah, because I've seen The Church and I saw it because I saw Argento's name was attached in some way.
And man, it looks like at some point around 2000, let's see. I guess around 2011, 2012, they started putting out live albums.
Wow.
And then 2014, they put out a collection. Then they put out 2015, the Horror Box, 3 LPs. And then let's see, we also got the Deep Red 40th anniversary. Which did they work on? Well, okay, Deep Red. That's wait, Deep Red's that's Argento.
Yeah, it's Argento. Yeah.
Which I'm not seeing that on here, but it says that they put that out. Which I know they also covered a few other soundtracks that wasn't theirs, I think, too, on occasions.
Yeah.
But yeah, they kind of, I guess when, when Italian horror and everything kind of spiked back up and there was a little bit more of a wanting of this kind of shit, they were like, you know what, there's a market for this now. So maybe we should go for it. There's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. God, there's been a shit ton of lineup changes with this band. Because there's about 20 something that I'm noticing on this. It's like, damn. I think it's mainly the main dude I want to say, but I could be wrong about that.
I believe that's what it is. Yeah, because I believe at one point when one of the first time, and this is back to different podcasts I had heard, they were talking about it, and I think he initially stopped Goblin and was doing his own thing and scoring films and doing his own musical endeavors, and then eventually came back around. There's a whole
that sounds about right.
There's a whole weird history there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I just know you guys have done some really cool shit for movie scores and soundtracks.
Here's something interesting I'm reading. It says, let's see here. They did the score for the European version of George A. Romero's 1978 Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In both this and Suspiria's opening title sequence, they are credited as the Goblins with Dario Argento. Tracks 1, 2, and 7 from the European version are also in the American version of the film. Interesting.
It's not surprising considering I delved into the history of Dawn of the Dead years back when I first saw it, and how Argento kind of distributed in Italy, how they worked together on the film, he and Romero and all that kind of stuff. There's a whole back history with that film that I had no idea about till I first bought it, and
there's oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I thought it was over.
Yeah. Oh, you're good. I was just gonna say that. Romero and Argento had a friendship Um, that was so the two evil Oz. You ever seen that one?
I have not. It's on my list to watch.
Okay, because it's two stories, one by Argento, one by Romero, and it's actually it's one of my favorites. It's fucking killer. But yeah, Argento and Romero they had like a nice little friendship there for a long time. And of course, Romero passed away a few years back, and
Right.
Papa Romero, as we call him. His son's a friend of mine.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And they were always the one thing that I was told about Romero and Argento meeting was Argento had to have an interpreter because Romero didn't know how to speak Italian and that kind of shit. Mm-hmm. And they would have like hour-long conversations with somebody else, like just interpreting back and forth. And I would have liked to seen more of those two collaborating. And also, Argento was supposed to, him and Fulci, they were supposed to work together. But Fulci, unfortunately got really sick and passed away before that was even able to happen. But Fulci was also, unfortunately, it was actually kind of sad. He died pretty much broke. And when he died, his funeral and everything, Argento took care of.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like taking care of each other in one way, shape, or form,
Yeah. I would have loved to have seen more from Argento and Romero, and even something from Argento and Fulci. That would have been, god damn.
Yeah, that would have been like I got chills just thinking about it. Like, I mean, could you imagine two of the biggest names in Italian horror, Giallo, whatever, like because they had a very similar style in a lot of ways, but like we were talking about that earlier, the differences, whatever. But they were so similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Too. And I think it would have been a bloody sexy mess.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you talk about Italian horror and Giallo and just Italian filmmaking, I mean, Argento and Fulci are two that especially when you're talking genre fare.
Mm-hmm.
They're the two that most everyone knows or learns about first, and then from there you start getting into like, Bava and Lenzi and going down, that staircase of all of these other filmmakers that are there. The lesser knowns, or maybe the not as known as well as Fulci and Argento. But
right.
Those two are at the top of that list. At least in my mind, that's the way it works. And it's not so much a hierarchy, it's just their stuff became more known and more mainstream because it became cult and it was it was censored, or it was, it got notoriety in either a good or a bad way because of content.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Way before social media existed,
Yeah, there was always
reputations.
Yeah, and the more outlandish you were or you are, sometimes that usually gets your name out there to a lot of people in some way, shape, or form. Not always in the best ways, but Bela Lugosi said it best: "There's no such thing as bad press."
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. If he lived these days, he probably wouldn't say
that. Yeah,
I mean, let's be honest.
No press is the best, probably.
Yeah. But you usually, from older horror fans that I know and I've talked to or whatever, it's usually, you start with Baba and you work your way down.
Yeah, I understand. Sorry, I was taking a drink. My throat got a little dry there.
Oh, you're good. That's what she said.
Hey now.
But yeah, back to what we were talking about, like just the intensity of some of these movies, And there's some of these, especially like opera, like with some of these scenes, like what are we named a couple of the death scenes. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones, and I'm trying to kind of drawing a blank.
I got one right off the top of my head. And the entire time it was when our main character gets back to her apartment, and she's told, "Okay, I'm gonna send one of my cops there to look after you. Here's his name. You'll know when he shows up. Let him in. He'll be there to make sure you're safe."
Yeah.
That entire scene when that guy comes in because she put in eye drops she couldn't see was tense because you're like, is this the killer? Is this not the killer? And she had her friend coming over, and then her friend, after the killer or cop, we're not entirely certain at this point, leaves. She's telling her, "You go get the phone. I'm going to stand by the door."
Yeah.
And then the person comes back to the door. "Open up, let me in. It's the cop. Look, I've got my ID. Can you see it?" She goes, "No, let me see your face."
Oh, yeah.
Waves the gun. He goes, "I've got a gun." She goes, "Let me see your face." And he just points the gun right at the eye hole, at the peephole, and just shoots her in the eye. But it's not just, it goes through it. You see the bullet travel down through the peephole right into her eye, and then she just in slow motion, and it was so fucking beautiful. I loved it.
No, that's a great scene. Yeah,
I had forgot about that.
That's a good one.
I was like, bravo.
Which, it's funny because you think there'd be more movies where that kind of shit happens. The only other one that I could think of, well, the only one that comes to mind is the Van Damme movie Hard Target.
Yeah,
they do something similar in that. But that was also how Richard Kuklinski, the Iceman, actually he killed one or two of his victims like that, where he would just he could tell that they were in front of the peephole and blast them. But yeah, the scene's incredibly realistic.
Yeah, and
it's brutal as fuck.
I'm kind of disappointed that Leanne's not on this episode, and she's gonna kill me for this. So I'm gonna have you back on so you guys can talk a little more about Kuklinski, because that is like her favorite serial killer. She just is so intrigued by the man's history. So she would probably have known that right away when you said that.
Well, I'm gonna correct you. He wasn't a serial killer.
True.
He wasn't a serial killer. He was a hired hand. Would he kill just about anybody? Yeah. No women, no children.
Yeah.
I'm a big Kuklinski guy too, and he was. We actually used samples of him in our first cassette that we put out years ago. Yeah, because
nice.
he's one fun person. He's got some fun interviews to watch, man. The way he carried himself and everything. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was very matter of fact. He's like, "Oh yeah, I would do this, this, and this to earn their trust, and then I'd kill him." It was easy.
Oh,
it was a job. I'm like, whoa. So I did misspeak. This is how little I know of Kuklinski, aside from what Leanne has showed me. That I labeled him as a serial killer because usually he gets lumped into that bunch. So,
right. But it's just, there was one time. What was he told? They asked him, what was it? The worst. Is there ever a killing that you regret? And he's like, no. Well, there was one. I don't want to talk about that one. And he's like, no, it's okay. And he's like, there's one time this guy was he was praying to God all over the place. And I gave him a half hour. And I told him, if your God can come save you, and I come back and you're gone, then you're saved. And he said, I came back and God never came. And it's just shit like that. It's like, well, what was he's like, I stabbed the, he's talking about another one. He's like, yeah, I stabbed the guy with a hypodermic needle. And they said, what's in the needle? And he goes, in his case, a heart attack. Ooh. And it just I got chills again. Just like Kuklinski he was a very interesting cat. He really was. But yeah. I would love to come back on and talk Kuklinski. I totally would.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it doesn't even have to be part of the topic. If she's on and you're on, you guys can just talk about it, because she introduced me and I was like, I think the interview he was talking about how he had to kill somebody, but he was like playing it up as if maybe he might not be straight to earn the guy's like trust a little bit and then get the job done. I'm like,
oh, when he's talking about
So-
going to the gay
yeah,
bar.
yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
okay, and he's like, yeah. Basically, I think the gist was you got to do what you got to do if you got to get the job done, and I don't get it. I don't leave a job undone. Like Jesus Christ.
The man didn't. I mean, he went out. You know, he was. It was Christmas Eve one year, and he had to go out, and he went and blew a guy's face off, and then the interviewer was like, "What did you do after that?" He goes, "I went home and put toys together for my kids."
Yeah, I remember seeing that clip, and I was like,
Yeah. Yeah. Kuklinski's face used to be the background of my laptop. Okay.
I mean, he was just very matter of fact. He's like, it was basically like asking a guy, what did you do before you went home to your family? It's like, oh, I worked my 8-hour shift. I dug trenches for whatever. And then I went home and put toys together. He was like, I went and blew the guy's face off. I went home and put toys together. It's like,
It was just
what
another
did you-
day.
Yeah, it's like, what did you think I did? I did my job. I went home to my family.
Oh yeah. I mean, the guy hung somebody from his back.
Yeah, I mean,
He was a big motherfucker.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
No. We're good, man. All good.
Excellent.
All good, man.
But yeah, that scene in particular, that one's probably one of my favorites too, just because it was so, like, you're watching it and you're going, don't be a dumbass and put your eye to it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's very clear, like, you're like, I know what's getting ready to happen. He's getting ready to blast her one right to the eye, and it's just and it's such a, like you say, it's a very beautifully done shot. I mean, you see, they show the bullet really close up going through the door and coming out and spiking her in the eye. And again, goes with the eye stuff, man. Goes with the eye stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He already had needles kind of close to the eye. He had to put something in the eye. In this case, it was a bullet.
Yeah. And the only other movie that off the top of my head I can think of that was, I think it was one of the Saw sequels. One of the traps or something was somebody looked out a peephole. There was a gun on the other side and just blew right through his eye. It was 2. Was it 2?
It was
Okay.
Saw 2. Yeah.
I was thinking it had to be 2 or 3 before they got completely off track.
Ridiculous.
And
Yeah. Saw 2 is probably my favorite. Yeah. So yeah, I forgot about that one though. Yeah. Good call now.
Yeah, I remember that when you said the other. I was like, okay, yeah, Saw as well. That was the only other one that I could think of.
Yeah. Anytime there's a gunshot to the eye in a film, it's either done really well, or you don't really see enough. And I think this one did perfect.
Yeah,
completely did perfect on it. Which, that when I'm talking about the killer and stuff in this one, I really thought it was the blonde haired dude there for a minute. I forgot. I was like, is the blonde haired dude or is it the fucking cop?
Yeah, I forgot that it was the cop that showed up early, and she was like, "What's with this guy? Why is he there? He says he's a fan." From the beginning, he's acting creepy, and you don't really. Once he goes, "Oh, I'm a cop," you're like, "Okay, he's investigating what's going on." Got it. That's why he's a little weird. He's trying to find out what's going on, maybe just watching everybody. Nope, not at all. But I too thought it was the director.
Yeah,
that was going around. I was like, is it this guy? Because even towards the end, when he grabs her, goes, "Oh, it was the cop." Who would have thought? I'm like, and then he gets hit in the back of the head. I'm like, oh, so it is the cop. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, shit, I forgot. Like I said, it had been so many years since I saw this. I was like, surprised when it happened again. I was like, oh, but like pleasantly surprised because I didn't just remember like after a certain scene, like, oh yeah, it's this guy.
Right. Yeah. But he did a good job of making you wonder. You if you hadn't seen it before or whatever, and watching the movie, or in our case, not seeing it for a long time, you're like, is it that guy or that guy? When a movie has you, because there's always a mystery in a lot of these too of who the killer is and all that, and a lot of times, especially these days, you already can guess who the killer is pretty quick. And when a movie has me going, oh, it's definitely that guy, it's that guy, and then it has me second guessing myself like shortly afterwards, and then I go back and forth with it. Yeah, that's always usually brownie points for me.
Yeah. I mean, when you do a red herring and you do it right, and I'm like, oh, I totally bought that this guy was, and then, you know, if you have 2 or 3, and each time you're like, okay, well, I'm buying that it's this guy now, it's not that guy, it's this guy, you can throw me off. More power to you. So many things nowadays, they don't really, you can kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
Like right away.
In most cases these days, now there's been a few that have come out that have been pretty mysterious. You know, there's been a couple that have kind of laid down some mystery for you, but yeah, in the most cases these days, it's usually pretty fucking predictable. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, like, you know, the Paranormal Activity movies, you already kind of know what's going to happen with that movie. You know, no matter if you like them or not, they're predictable. You know, like even going back to the Saw movies. I mean, it was all, you know, they're going on like what, their fucking 12th movie now or some shit they're getting ready to put out.
Yeah, something.
And it's like, why? That's to the point. But it's like after so long, you're just kind of like, all right, I know the pattern here. Right. You know, it's like I know how this goes, and that's why movies like Saw and shit, like the big franchises that come out, that movie just ends up like that franchise ends up running itself from having a good story to being like just a borderline smut film and torture porn. You know, which I still watch them all, I still love them all. They should have just left it as a fucking trilogy. But you know that happens sometimes, and a lot more these days than back in those days. You know.
Yeah, Saw to me just kind of became Traps the movie.
Yeah,
like it. Yeah, like after a certain point, I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch this to see what the effects look like, and the effects in the movies most of the time were really good. But when I hear people saying, "Oh, the first Saw sucked," it didn't get good until like Saw 4 or 5, I'm like, did you actually watch the first one? Because the first one is a lot more than just a horror movie.
Yeah,
it's a psychological thriller and a horror movie, and it's the twist that M. Night Shyamalan couldn't get to stick in a lot of movies. Firmly stuck.
That guy,
because nobody knew that body in that room between those two guys was going to get up at the end.
And you forget about it. Oh, okay. So we're gonna do this real quick. Okay, so in the original Saw film, it took me a couple watches to like it. But the one thing that I left the theater, because I laughed, me and my friends laughed out loud, and people thought we were just fucking sick at a few things in the first Saw movie. But the first two are my favorites, and the fact that the whole time that they're in there, like, you know, there's a body. But it gets to a point you forget there's a body out like in the middle of the floor. And so like when he gets up and, you know, game over or whatever the fuck he says, like, again, chills, just because that's a great fucking ending to that fucking movie. Like that's important. That's important horror writing. Completely.
And I still remember the first time I saw it, because I didn't get to go to the theater and see it, but I made sure if anyone was like, "Oh, have you seen Saw?" I said, "Do not tell me a goddamn thing about that movie, because if you spoil it, I will come back and hurt you. I will physically harm you in a way that you would wish you were in that movie." Man, so I still remember when Jigsaw stands up at the end. Before he pulls that appliance off his head, I was like, "Oh, is it a zombie? Is this like some weird zombie thing? What the fuck?" And then he pulls that off. I'm like, I was still like, "What the fuck is happening?" And then just game over, shuts the door. I'm like, how?
Right.
And then of course we get the answers in part 2, and you're like, "This fucker's a genius."
Oh yeah, that's why I can't hate those movies.
Yeah,
those movies.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say those movies got so they were kind of the beginning of the comeback of like gore in theaters.
Yeah.
And disturbing stuff, because when those movies started coming out, like the theater, because I worked at that Rite Aid I was talking about, like just right around the corner. It was like it's a little shopping mall area, and right around the corner is the movie theater, and I used to have all kinds of kids that would come in to Rite Aid, and they're all, we're gonna go, we want to go see Saw, blah blah blah. And I remember it was Saw 3, Saw 2 or Saw 3 that came out. I can't remember what it was. And a group of kids that always came in, they were like, "Hey, gotta ask you a question." I was like, I'm not selling you cigarettes. I'm not selling you booze. Don't even ask. I was like, "No. Do you think you'd be able to like walk down there and buy us a couple of Saw tickets?" And I was like, "Let me ask my boss." And my boss was like, she's like, "Yeah, that's fine." So I walked down and got these kids like fucking Saw like tickets and just, just spreading the love of horror, just, a little bit more, whatever. At least I didn't sell them alcohol. See?
Hey, you're giving them an education.
Yeah, something like that. I always try.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like you took a 3-year-old in to see Saw.
No, these were like 13, 14-year-old like
they're just
kids,
they're just a few years under the legal age to buy the tickets on their own. They're fine.
I mean, I was watching shit that I shouldn't have when I was like younger than that. So
I grew up watching all sorts of action movies that I shouldn't have been watching.
Same. Yeah.
I was exposed to all the Chuck Norris films and the Sylvester Stallone films and all that at an early age. So that, and then staying up late nights to watch horror movies and Freddy's Nightmares and giving myself nightmares because, let's face it, as a child, I was a pussy when it came to horror. But I sought out those scares, no matter what.
Exactly. And I still, to this day, look for those scares. I haven't found too many of them lately, but there's something special about it,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is that after a certain point, you consume so much of this stuff that, like you said, we can pick out the tropes right away. We can determine who the killer is right away. You know where it's going, and it's like, well, I've seen almost everything that can scare me. So when something comes along and you're like leaving the theater or you're at home watching it on a streaming service and you're like a little disturbed after watching it, you're like, that got under my skin. It's like, good job.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer, and I do this when I'm writing my horror stuff, is like, I don't want you to think that you already know. Like, well, actually, I take that back. I kind of want you to think you already know where the story is going, and then I will do a complete 180 and throw in some really fucked up shit just to make you go, what? And I like when movies do that. And, a lot of people bitch about, Terrifier 2. I love the Terrifier movies. Terrifier 2, I think, was great. And it didn't have, one of the biggest things I love about it is you thought you knew, but you had no idea. And there was a little bit more every time, like every few frames. There's always that, it's not, okay, it's a gory fucking movie, but then you also have this religious aspect of good versus evil, and then you have the sideline of the side plot of the woman that had the face eaten off and shit. Like, I don't know if you've seen them or not, but
I've seen the first one. I haven't seen the second one yet. It's on my. I gotta get to it soon.
Yeah,
because everyone's talking about it, and I've been avoiding any kind of spoilers about it. So I'm like, okay, I wasn't a huge fan of the first one, and that's mostly just the story for me wasn't that intriguing. But what made me a fan was the presentation of the gore effects, the presentation of Art the Clown, who to me is right up there with many of the other prolific horror movie villains at this point. Like he firmly planted his feet and is like, I can be up there with Freddy and Jason in that conversation. You're going to recognize me. You're going to know exactly what I bring to the table. And it stuck with me. I mean, I saw All Hallows Eve when, you see that character first. So I was like, okay, I'll check out Terrifier. Like I said, the story for me wasn't great, but a lot of those effects, knowing that that's where they kind of came from, was an effects background to do this. It was so good. So I was like, okay, I'm on board if you do something else. So I want to check out Terrifier 2. I've heard that people are like, it's way over the top when it comes to gore. I'm like, okay, maybe you don't realize my bar is set kind of high when it comes to gore. As far as story, I keep it low, but for gore and effects wise, it's high because I'm an 80s kid. Okay, so I grew up seeing some of the best stuff put out by, Baker, Bottin, Savini,
Mhm.
K&B effects coming around. We grew up Beekler. I grew up on these guys doing effects. So I'm like, my
Right.
standards are high for effects.
Yeah.
But seeing what the first one did, I'm like, the second one's going to be good. But when people are like, oh, it's so over the top and gross, I'm like, maybe not for me.
Well, I'm going to say that
I can see where some of them are coming from. Go ahead. Let's make your point here. I want to hear it. Sorry, I don't mean to be aggressive about it. No.
I don't mean to like interrupt. I get excited. No. I get excited how much.
Same.
No, my thing about it is because Terrifier 2 is incredibly gory. The fact that it was put in theaters is amazing. It almost got an NC-17 rating.
I did hear about that, and I heard people walking out because they were visibly getting sick. I'm like, you've never seen anything this bad.
There is one scene in particular that I'm going to say it's a bedroom scene.
Okay.
And it's so gruesome and it's so over the top. Like, I mean, it's gore to be gore. And I think it's up there with a lot of the great, kills in horror. It's brutal as fuck. It really is. And it also goes down to again, the special effects being, not CGI, and being practical, which makes it even better. But yeah, you were also real quick that, we're kind of going all over the place, but the thing about it is also, like you said, that art is up there with like Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers and all those guys. And I totally agree. It's been a long time since we have had a straight up original character, an original villain, to come out. You know what I mean? Like, because you get a lot of these reboots and you get a lot of these prequels and all that kind of shit. And we actually have Terrifier 2, Terrifier 3 is coming out. You know what I mean? Like, I like that. Terrifier 1, it's like Terrifier 2. That's the kind of shit, like, I remember when I was a kid, and it was like Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, and, and shit like that. It's like, it's good to have something, another character to join that hierarchy. And honestly, I think that art is definitely one of them. And it's a breath of fresh air. It's I don't. A lot of people disagree with me, but a lot of people agree with me. Art is the savior of slasher.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like I said, he firmly just kind of planted his feet and was like, "I'm going to stand right alongside these guys," and I totally buy it. I'm all for it. Because too many times with these movies, you're getting either a killer that's derivative of so many others, or the movie isn't good enough for what you were trying to do or create this, or you're doing a creepypasta thing with Slender Man. It's like that guy. No, I'm not buying it. Or something like the Bye Bye Man. It's like it's just not.
Oh God,
you're not there.
Right,
you're not where you should. I get what you were trying to do. You're not there.
You're
in the bargain bin of horror villains. You're over here with guys that lasted one movie, or even if they got a franchise, they're not memorable.
They don't live up. Like, do you remember Killjoy? You ever Killjoy?
I know who Killjoy is. I have not seen the movies, but I mean, Full Moon. Yeah.
There's a whole franchise of that shit. I've got all of them.
I think there's like 8 movies.
They're not good,
right?
Yeah, they're not good. They're not good whatsoever.
It's Full Moon. I'm not expecting much out of those, just like I don't expect much out of any of the Evil Bong movies.
Oh yeah, I've got all those too. Love those movies. They're ridiculous as fuck.
Oh my god. One of them is just shilling all of their action figures, which are shitty action figures, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I mean, hey, credit to Charles Band. He's making movies and getting his shit out there, so it's far more than I'm doing.
Hey, I'm a big Evil Bong fan, so
I like the first one. It's just when you start getting to like 2 and 3 and
Evil Bong versus Ginger Dead Man.
Ginger Dead Man. Actually, that I'm okay with. That I'm okay with. I got to see that one. I saw ones after. I'm like, I don't think I'm missing a whole lot with the Versus one, but I mean, one of them was literally the entire setting was in a weed shop. They didn't leave that setting. I'm like, you guys got a space for the entire time to shoot this movie, and you took advantage to shoot everything here.
Yeah,
I get it,
no.
But at the same time, I was like, there's nothing going on in this movie.
Yeah,
I think that was Evil Ball. That might have been 666 or something. I don't know. There's like 12 of those movies.
There's a lot more of them than I realized. I was actually going through and seeing which ones I haven't seen. And I don't have all those. I'm actually missing like 3 or 4 of them. But yeah, they're just goofy ass fucking movies. Of course, again, Full Moon. You know, like those. But it's still going with the franchise thing and stuff. You know, it's like those aren't going to ever like live up to being anything great. Yeah. You know what I mean? And also, I also got to say that when it comes down to art and Terrifier and all that stuff, it's also nice to have a clown not be Pennywise or something like that comes out and actually it's kind of fucking creepy.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so
I get it.
You know,
And I'll say this. My fear of clowns stems from 2 things. Reading it at far too young of an age. Same. So the version of Pennywise in my head is far more fucked up than anything that's been on film. Although, credit to Tim Curry, he really creeped me out in that role.
Beep, Richie.
And then on one of the local stations, they used to play this movie about John Wayne Gacy, starring, I think it was Brian Dennehy. And they always showed him in the clown makeup, and I was so young, and I remember, and it instilled this fear of clowns in me, because one, I'm like, okay, clowns will kill you and put you in a crawl space if they're real people. 2, you don't know if a clown is an evil entity from another dimension that's going to eat you. So clowns are evil, stay away from them. And to this day, I'm like, nope, fuck you. You come near me, I'm going to knock you the fuck out.
Are you talking about the movie Gacy?
No, there was one before. It was like a made-for-TV film in like the I want to say the mid to late 80s. Like not long after he was, probably, I think it was the 70s he was caught, or early 80s? Fuck, I don't remember. But it was something towards the late 80s, maybe even the early 90s. It was like a made-for-TV movie.
Was it Dear Mr. Gacy?
It might have been. I cannot.
That was William Forsythe. That was William Forsythe who played in that.
There was one. I gotta look it up now because I know it was. See, this is what happens. I know in my head. I'm like, God damn it! I know. I'm having to figure out how to spell his damn name too because I know unless I misremember, it's that stupid Mandela effect thing.
Right.
God damn it! I have to find out now because I know I'm not crazy. Maybe I am.
Yeah, I just remember because I don't know Brian. I don't know about Brian Denny playing him. I could be wrong. Hold on a second, because now I have to. Now I have to look because that's gonna bug me.
Yeah,
because I could see him. I could see him playing him. Let's see.
God, I'm only at 2000. Jesus Christ. This guy's done. Brian Dennehy has done so much.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he's one of the best. I mean, he pissed off Rambo good enough.
To Catch a Killer, John Wayne Gacy, TV miniseries, 1992.
Oh.
And I remember there was a station that played it, and every time I saw him in that clown makeup, and then I saw pictures of the real Gacy later in that same, I was like, nope.
Yeah.
It's like, I already had Stephen King fucking me up, but now you got this.
Yeah, Stephen King's really good about that shit. But yeah, I didn't know about that movie. That's okay, cool. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that one. That's interesting. I all right. See, I like to learn different stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, and
everything.
I knew. I'm looking at the image. I can't. I'm swiping off that. Oh no.
So you have a full on fear of clowns.
Yeah, and it doesn't trigger a flight response in me. It triggers a fight response.
Oh, okay.
Ask me what that means, Chuck.
What does that mean?
It means when friends of mine took me to Knott's Berry Farm here for their Halloween haunt, and they dragged me into a clown maze. I walked through with my fists clenched, ready to throw down. And none of the clowns would jump out to scare me. They either scared the group in front of me and my friends or the group behind us. Because they'd peek around the corner and I was watching and I saw them and they saw my fists and they wouldn't scare us. We got out. I still had my fist clenched and was shaking from the adrenaline. They're like, what's going on? I said, I was going to hit somebody if they jumped out at me.
Yeah.
And now we got to go find me a drink to calm down. But yeah, I was full on going to punch a worker. Knowing.
I mean, I don't do good about that shit either.
Yeah, I don't like them. They creep me out. There was one that drove through my neighborhood here back like not long after I got out of high school. He was driving like a party van or something. Drove by my front door and I was at the front door just looking out. And he looked over and stared at me as he was driving by, slowed down and just stared. Went down to the cul-de-sac near my house, turned around, came back and stared as he drove off. And I was like, come back and see what happens. Come back and see. I will be taken away from murder, you creepy fuck. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I would. I wouldn't trust a clown driving a fucking ice cream truck. I'm already weird about that shit as it is.
Yeah.
I don't have a fear of clowns about them, but they are creepy in their own little way.
Yeah.
Creepy
So when
and sad.
There are some people that are like, oh, you're afraid of clowns? I'm like, let me explain exactly. It's not the fear where like I'm gonna go in the corner and start crying. It's if you dress up as a clown for Halloween and come to my house to try and scare me, you're going to get assaulted.
Right.
It does not look well for you to try and scare me as a clown. You wear a clown mask, I'm okay. I'm like, I know it's a mask. You come in the makeup and do you put time and effort into making yourself look that way, that is disturbing.
I actually was painted up as John Wayne Gacy one year for a Halloween party.
Oh.
And it wasn't on purpose. I had some buddies of mine, we went to a little college party in Berea. And I didn't have a costume or nothing. I was just kind of just there hanging out. Like I didn't realize what we were doing. We didn't, And one of the friends, one of the girls, was like, "Oh well, I'll paint your face something." And I'm like, "All right." And so she paints my face. I look in the mirror, and I look. It's straight up the Pogo the Clown makeup. And yeah, it was. There was. Let's put it this way. I didn't get laid that night. There was a lot of females that were not too. They just, a lot of girls don't like the clown makeup,
Yeah.
Which, unless the only time that would be acceptable is if they're juggalettes. Whoop whoop.
Yeah, I'm not going to go down the path of juggalos and juggalettes. I'm not particularly into that, but hey, to each their own. That's
No, I'm not a juggalo, but I'm like a quarter juggalo, I think, because I do like me some psychopathic hatchet killing rap.
Hey, as far as I delve into it, is Leanne introduced me to Tech 9, so I am a Tech 9 fan.
Oh yeah, Tech 9. Yeah, Tech 9's good.
But my brother tried to get me into ICP back in the day, and I was like, I just don't get it. He's like, but this and that. I'm like, I don't get it. Let me go back to my Dr. Dre and my Wu-Tang Clan. Thanks. That was me.
For me, it was, hey, I'm a horror fan. I like hip hop. It's called horror rap, and these guys are doing it, and it just kind of, after a certain point, I kind of fell off a little bit, but I always have a little bit of love for Violent J and Shaggy.
Yeah, the first time, because Leanne got us VIP to go see like Tech 9 and all this strange music and this and that. And after the concert, I didn't say anything while we were there. Afterwards, I'm like, am I correct in assuming that Tech 9 is affiliated? She goes, yes, those were juggalos at the concert. I'm like, okay, good to know.
Well, Tech 9 was never, he was never...
Like there was an affiliation, but they weren't part of the same label or part of the same group. They had some crossover. stuff happen.
They toured, like he came on tour with them.
Same tour, stuff like
Gathering
that.
of the Juggalos. Yeah, that kind of shit. But yeah, he's always got love. He's always got love for the Juggalos and for the Psychopathic crew. So yeah, some killer clown shit.
Which my killer clowns usually come from outer space. That's just me.
It's a classic.
It was
a fucking classic.
My dad introduced me to it in the early days of HBO way back when. So credit to my dad on that one. But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
we back to opera. See, this is how good it is talking with you about horror. We can go off on anything and then come right back. I love this kind of conversation. Because this is a conversation I would have with friends. We talk about one thing and then just veer off into everything else and then still steer it back at some point.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm all about this shit completely.
Yeah. And actually, I want to talk about the end of this movie because essentially we get two endings.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one, I had forgot that once we know who the killer is, he basically takes her and ties her up in this small room and is going to burn himself.
Mm-hmm.
After handing her his gun, that he's tied her to this chair, got her wrist tied. He's telling her where to aim the gun with, like, moving it with her hand. And he goes, "Okay, now shoot." She can't see. She's been blindfolded. I'm like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah, it's pretty demented.
Yeah, and the room goes up in flames. She's eventually rescued after she gets herself free. And then it turns out he wasn't even the body that was in there.
Yeah, her and Marco, the director guy, they leave, and end up going to the Alps, and they're in some nice little house, little kind of, I don't know if you can't really call it a cabin, just kind of like a house out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then you find out, like, and that's also a thing just in horror, is don't always think the killer's dead just yet. Yeah. And I thought it was actually kind of cool how they did it. But you kind of knew something was going to happen because everything just seemed too perfect,
Yeah.
And then when old dude Marco or whatever, he finds the maid dead, which his reaction to that is like not like it should have been. His reaction isn't like, "Oh my god!" No, he's just like staring at it. He's like, "Oh."
Yeah, like, "Oh, okay, I guess the TV report of saying they're on a manhunt for this guy is true." Like,
yeah, he's here, run. And then, of course, the whole thing happens where old dude gets fucking stabbed over and over again by the killer.
Yeah, which was kind of crazy because she takes off. I don't want to say she's running. She's more like quickly galloping down the hill, and the killer is like almost a dead sprint after her.
Yeah.
Catching up, and then all of a sudden here comes Marco out of nowhere from the side, like just full on tackling him to the ground. Like, how did you catch up so quick?
Yeah.
And then of course he gets stabbed by the guy.
Over and over again. And she's just kind of standing there going, "Oh." And that's the thing is, like, I mean, there's a lot she could have like done to save this guy.
Yeah.
Like she could have like pushed him, could have done something, but she kind of just watched him get stabbed to death.
Yeah.
And then plays off the whole thing, trying to, say that she's she, just like her mother.
Yeah, exactly. Which I guess we didn't divulge that part.
We didn't mention that.
Yeah. He had known her mother, and she basically was using him. He was like her slave to kill because she enjoyed watching it happen. Is essentially, I believe, what the whole gist was of their relationship.
Yeah.
It's like a really
he got tired of the demands.
Yeah.
And so he was comparing Betty to her mother, and which he goes into all that before all this, when before the fire happens.
Yeah.
And she, to get him back to not be so violent towards her, she's like, "We gotta go. If they find the body, I'm just like my mom. You're right." and then she sees that there's dogs coming for him, that are out and about, and she knows that the cops are around. So she takes a giant rock, starts hitting him in the fucking head, and the cops come, and it's a whole fucking thing. And honestly, I totally forgot about the ending when watching this.
Yeah,
and,
same.
I would have chose a better ending.
Yeah. I thought she was going to end up like bashing his head in, so when the cops did come over, they were going to have to pull her away from him.
That's what I would have done. That is exactly what I thought.
Like, she's been pushed so far that to end this, she's got to essentially, do what he was doing and just unleash that really psychotic side.
Yeah.
Instead, she hits him a few times, knocks him down, and then just goes, "I was never like my mother."
Yeah.
But then the cops were really weird at the end of this, too, because they're asking her, like, "Oh, what'd you say to him?" She goes, "Nothing of importance."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Okay,
just
I guess carry on." I'm like, wait a minute. Are you going to ask her whose blood is on her blouse? Are you not going to follow up? Because there's a dead guy over in the field not far from here.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, they said they saw her talking to him, which that also doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But because she was talking to him standing over top of the guy's body. So if they saw her talking to him, then they saw him being stabbed too.
Yeah,
but
which means they didn't act any sooner to try and get over there.
Well, and also the dogs were going across the little opening they were walking on, and so were those guys. And the only reason they knew that they were right there is because they saw them when they were walking.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, oh, but how did you see her talking to you?
Yeah.
Just one of those little things where you're like, that doesn't make any sense, Argento. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's like if you would have.
He should have smashed his head.
She should have smashed his head. And to clear up with the cops going, "Oh, we saw you talking to him," there was a helicopter that flew overhead. We know now it was part of the search. They could have said, "Oh, the helicopter told us they saw you with him, which is why we routed back this way."
Would make more sense.
Clears it up. You show a guy with a radio? Okay, perfect. They got a radio call. Instead, it's like, well, wait a minute. How did you see? Because you were going the other direction and somebody just happened to glance over and see him. Like, oh, there they are. If you saw them, you wouldn't have somebody go, there they are over there.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
A little weird. But I read that ending was actually, they wanted Argento to cut that out of the film, and he said, "No, I'm leaving it." Like, okay. But that makes sense. It's Argento. He's like, "No, fuck you. This is my film." Okay.
Yeah. Him and Fulci both are really good about pretty much telling people to fuck off if they didn't like his ideas or like their ideas.
I think aside from that ending, I still really, really like this film.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a classic. I mean it really is, and it's definitely.
Go ahead.
Go on.
Go ahead. You first.
No, I was just gonna say I think it's a staple in Argento's career.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely it's it's Suspiria, and Demons and all that shit or whatever. Like it's up there with all the ones that we know and love, and it's creepy, it's disturbing, it's bloody, and it gets the point across pretty easily. It's just just a classic Giallo horror film.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think this is very much like an entry-level type of Giallo. If somebody's looking to just get in, like how I discovered it without knowing anything, this is a good way to kind of get right into what Giallo is you've got the Black Glove Killer, which, one thing I want to say, not only was the killer wearing black gloves in this movie, then he was wearing surgical gloves over the black gloves.
Yeah.
Which I was like, okay, it's an added layer that I hadn't seen done. Like I've seen other, like Black Belly of the Tarantula, the killer in that is wearing surgical gloves, not black leather gloves like your typical Giallo films are.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But when I saw the surgical gloves over the leather, I was like, okay, you're trying not to leave any trace of anything behind. And that way you could still wear those gloves around in your normal everyday life and nobody's going to think twice about it.
Yeah. I mean, and also the fact that, like, so the part where he like, cause he's washing off the bracelet, and that's when he takes it off. I think if I remember correctly, that's when he takes off the surgical gloves off top of it or whatever. You also, I mean, it didn't really explain it, but I mean, there's also the idea of, okay, well, just in case there is a rip or tear in the gloves, this way there's nothing, that's gonna trace it back to that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna go out and slaughter people, you got to take every precaution that you can.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, he even wore a black hood over his head so you wouldn't pick up on who it was.
Yeah.
So you can show your killer, which is something you don't really see in a lot of these. You either see like in shadow, or you see the feet, or you see the hands from the POV perspective. You don't really see full on. And Argento was like, well, I'm going to show you the killer head to toe, but his face is going to be obscured by this hood, and you're not going to get any sort of idea of who it could be. Even the voice.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell because it was distorted, and even when he was like talking through the door before he shot that woman, it was a very nondescript, indiscernible voice.
Yeah.
Like later on, you were like, "Oh, that was you." No wonder they cast or had that voice dub over. It's like it worked because you couldn't pick up on it really.
Well, even in the scene with the woman getting shot with the eye hole, he flashes his badge and it shows his face right there. But you barely see it because of the light and all that stuff, which is, but you see that it's a guy that has a mustache and glasses in the picture. So like, it's kind of all you right then is when it's those little subtle things. Right then is when you kind of go, that's the killer. Like, that's not a cop. It's, cause they could have played that either way. And, I like the way that it went. Yeah. That was how I was wanting to go.
Yeah. There is one thing it did delve into the weird. The little girl crawling around the air conditioning vents in this damn building.
Yeah.
It's like, what? I mean, I get it. It got her out of the apartment when the killer was there, our main character, but it was just kind of like, where did this even come from?
Yeah. And that's another little thing though that comes along with these kind of movies. Is there's always going to be shit that doesn't make sense. There's always going to be those parts where you're going, why? You can actually go back and look at just about any Fulci film and feel the same way about it. like House by the Cemetery, one of my favorite movies. Movie doesn't make a lick of sense, but I love it. I mean, it really doesn't make any sense. But there's something about it. Yeah.
I saw it once way back when, and I could not tell you what I saw. I just know that in looking back on social media, I posted, "Hey, I'm watching House by the Cemetery," and I know it was weird and it didn't make any sense. Other than that, I have to go back and watch it again because my brain just couldn't process and hold on to all of it.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's just like, okay, this movie's just so fucked up, because there's a lot of cool stuff with it, but even as a huge fan of it, I can't, even City of the Living Dead, which I have a fucking poster of right behind me, like that movie, it's choppy as fuck too, because there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on in it, but you can't even tell if it's like actually making that much sense or not. I mean, it's like chopped up parts of different people dying different fucked up ways, and there's not really too much of a story. I mean, there's a little bit of a story. There's a tiny little bit of a story. But then there's a whole bunch of like nonsense. You're going, I don't get it. I love this movie. And why? You know what I mean? Like, because I really do have to look at some of these movies and go, I love it, but I still can't figure out all the reasons why I do.
Yeah.
And every time I watch one of these types of movies, I figure out new reasons why I do. And maybe that's another reason why I love watching these all the time. Like, Fulci and Argento are two that are movies that, like, they're movies I go to sleep to. Like, if I just want something to listen to while I'm sleeping, and I've seen a good fucking portion of all of them, and I can listen to them and I know exactly what scene it's at.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one is definitely it's a must if you're not familiar with Giallo. if you've only watched a couple of Giallo films from either, be it other directors besides, Fulci and Bava and Argento, Opera's a good one. It really is. You're right. It's definitely a good one to kind of hold the door open for those that are less educated about
Yeah.
it. You know?
I think it works two ways. Is one, it can get somebody exposed to the Giallo genre, so they can go down that path and be like, okay, I really want to see what else is in this. Also,
Right.
it exposes you to Argento in an easy to consume manner before you start diving into some of the more weird shit that he did. Like Suspiria is not something I would show to somebody right away. I was shown it right away as my first exposure to Argento. I
Right.
appreciate that, but I was already going into it having seen so much other stuff that was really weird. And I had a run around that time where I was consuming so much Japanese horror and weird shit, like
Oh yeah.
what was it, Tokyo Gore Police and Machine.
Oh shit! I was sitting there thinking about that. I was like, Tokyo Gore Police. Oh, dude, yeah.
I saw that movie and I was like, I don't care if this doesn't make any fucking sense. I love it.
I'm so weird about Japanese movies.
I just love that when somebody got an arm cut off, it was just a fountain.
Oh yeah, Tokyo Gore Police
Yeah.
is one I've always liked because of that reason. You ever seen Itchy the Killer?
No, but trust me, there's a lot of Japanese horror I have not seen. There was a lot I was taking in so much, I was like, I gotta go to something else for a minute because I'm wearing myself out.
Itchy the Killer, I'm gonna say this right now. It's such a fucked up movie on so many levels.
Its reputation is known by me. I just have not seen the actual film yet.
The first scene, I'm not gonna say it, but there's something that goes on, and the opening scene, the opening title is mushed in with it because there is a substance that's dripping, and that's all I can really, without being too graphic. And yeah, an Old Boy. Have you watched Old Boy? Not the remake that came out with what's his ass, Josh Brolin.
Josh Brolin. No, remake? What are you talking about? No, I would watch the original if I'm going to watch Old Boy. The only one that exists in my head, because I basically heard that the remake was essentially shot for shot, just done for Western audiences. I'm like, what's the point?
Right, yeah. And I haven't seen any of the other Old Boy movies because there's like 2 or 3 of them. All I know is I watched the first one and I was like, my jaw was dropping by the end of it. That's all, it's gone. Yeah. I'm so picky about some of those movies. Yeah. So I won't give none away, but it's definitely, it's a good one. It's a good one. It's just, whew. And then also, because I know we're getting to that point or whatever, but that's going back to, what you're getting into. Mm-hmm. With different, if you watch a Korean movie or a Japanese horror movie, that you're going to probably have some creepy girl, with long hair, and moves weird. You also know there's a possibility that you're going to get some weird sex stuff and some real taboo shit. That's almost hard to watch.
Yeah.
And you're also, there's a possibility of you getting these semi-anime, but with people live action stuff going on, like I said, with Italian, you're getting that the sexual stuff, as well as you get, eyes being, poked out and stabbed and shot, whatever else, the brutality of it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, in all honesty, I'll tell you, it's actually kind of crazy because last couple of years, I don't watch much, but there's a couple of Spanish. I can't remember the name of it. There's a couple of Spanish horror films that I checked out that they're very similar to Giallo films. They have a very similar brutality. They have a very similar take on killers. Okay. But yeah, and then of course, American horror films, there's so many different things that, it's like, you have movies that are at the bottom of the spectrum and you have movies that are at the top of the spectrum, and we're all over the fucking place. And we have taken from a lot of those other ones. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. There's a lot of American films out there that wear the influences right on their sleeve.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's some that'll be like, oh no, I've not seen any of this Italian horror. It's like, really? Because your movie was exactly like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, just give credit where credit's due. But, so much is taken from so many. I mean, influenced across the board by however many of these guys.
Hey, praise Argento, praise Bava, praise Fulci, praise Poopy, whatever his fucking name is. Praise all these fucking guys, because they bring the slaughter, and you can't have laughter without slaughter, right?
Exactly.
I don't know what that means.
Exactly. Well, hey, if it worked in the 2008 film The Dark Knight, it works right here.
There you go. There you go.
I've seen The Dark Knight way too many fucking times.
It's a good one, man. Heath Ledger made that fucking movie.
It is. I like the Nolan trilogy. People are gonna hate me for that. I did like Dark Knight Rises.
Mm-hmm. I did too. I thought that Bane was great. But to me, when it comes down to those movies, like, I never liked Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne or Batman.
I get it.
I'm a big fan of American Psycho, so if I want Patrick Bateman, I'll just go watch one of those.
Yeah.
I
get it. It's
not wearing hockey pants. Like, I mean, honestly, Dark Knight, I watched that movie and I will literally, like, there's you can go on YouTube and it's just the scenes with Joker. I'll just watch that.
Yeah. I think a buddy of mine, we went like 3 times to the theater to watch it that year. Because we were just like, yeah. Same with Batman Begins, because it was like, holy shit, I know the story of Bruce Wayne, but I was like, this is done very well. I didn't mind being told the origin again.
They did the origin. Seeing that, what was cool about that one was they didn't go with they kept with, like, the classic, shit, whatever. But they also brought in, like, it was almost kind of like watching an adult version of, like, the animated show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I love the animated series.
Oh, that was
love it.
That was my second exposure to Batman as a kid, which became my favorite. The first was the 60s TV show.
Exactly. So, same here.
Then when the animated series came by, I was like, oh, this is my Batman. Yeah. And then, of course, before that, I saw the 89 movie, of course, and I was like, oh, this is dope. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
And then the animated series, I was like, well, now the animated series goes above, Batman and Batman Returns.
Yeah, I still love those. I'd love to find a box set of all those. Yeah. I still love watching them. I've still got Mask of Phantasm around here somewhere on VHS.
See,
classic.
I never bought that one, but I watched it and I was like, this might be the best Batman movie I've seen.
You know what? I'll tell you. I found that movie. I was looking for it for fucking ever, and a few years ago, I was in a big buying bulk VHS movies, and there were some people that were selling like a shit ton of fucking VHSs, and it was like $30. They're all yours. And that was one movie that I kept trying to find, and I'll shit you not, it was in that probably fucking 400 fucking VHSs that if not more. That I got. It was like one of the top ones. I was like, fucking A. So yeah. Classic.
Yeah. I've been watching the animated series again on HBO Max because it's there. For now, it's there.
Oh,
and
nice. I'm
just like, wow. This is still in 2023 as amazing as it was then.
Oh yeah, dude. It's one of those that will always hold up. I right now in my head I can think of like 7 of my favorite fucking episodes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Good shit. Completely good shit.
Yeah. And for the longest time, I had no idea that Mark Hamill was my favorite Joker of all time.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Mark Hamill fucking... I'm not a Star Wars guy. I've always respected it, you know. But Mark Hamill doing the voice for Joker, top notch,
Yeah.
fucking notch.
Yeah. I've never been a huge Star Wars guy. I mean, I've seen all the movies. I've seen most of the series. I'm like, okay, it's good for what it is. I'm not hardcore. And then when people are like, oh, we should, lynch the people behind this movie because it's dog shit. I'm like, dude, you're getting more of something you loved as a kid. Fuck off, man. Like, just if you don't like it, don't watch it. That's where I come down to, is like, you can hate something, but to actively tell everyone that likes it you're a piece of shit for liking it, it's like, it's kind of where I draw the line. I'm like, come on. I mean,
I try not to be like that because I mean everybody's got their
Yeah.
opinions. There is only one. We're not even going to start. We're not even going to start this because we ain't got the time for it. But there's only one franchise that I think that if you support it, then there is some fucking issues with you if you know the story behind it. And that's Jeepers Creepers.
yeah,
And that shit should be wiped from the fucking face of the planet, along with any of his other fucking piece of shit movies. They're all horrible fucking shit.
I am with
That's
you.
the
on
only
that.
one though.
Yeah, because I watched the first one way back when, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. I kind of like this. And then I found out, and I went, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
and they let him keep making movies.
Yeah, and especially after he made Powder,
Yeah.
which was about a boy in a fucking shed forever. But anyway, yeah. Fuck that guy. Fuck those movies. Let's move on.
We'll move on. So, I think bottom line here, if we get back, I think we both fucking recommend Opera to
Definitely.
everybody.
Definitely.
I mean, I had fun going back and watching it. I'm going to probably watch it again in the next couple of days here, even though I have another movie I'm supposed to watch. I'm going to fit Opera in there again, too.
I think I'm going to watch more Giallo here in a little bit. I've got to watch Groundhog Day for Video Store Clerks because tomorrow we're talking about Bill Murray and stuff like that, and that's one
nice.
of the main ones. But I think after I watch that one, I think I might have to dive into a little bit more Italian stuff because I'm kind of in the mood now.
Yeah.
So
yeah, same.
I love this dude.
I have so much stuff in my Shudder. I'm like, oh man, there's like just general horror, and then there's all the Italian Giallo and the stuff that is technically Giallo, but it goes a little more supernatural because it's Italian. It gets weird, but yeah, I'm on a kick now. I'm definitely going to do this again next year for January, just to spoil it for everybody who's listening. So, Chuck, you're more than welcome to come back on, man. You got an open invite to come back anytime for this, but I mean, you can come back anytime on the show, of course. But if you want to come back for more Giallo.
Oh, definitely. I mean, January's my birthday month too. And there's not a better, a better month for me to be talking about Giallo film. So yeah, I'm definitely
nice.
down.
Well, happy birthday month, man.
Oh yeah, I was born on Friday the 13th, and I actually
right.
got my Friday the 13th this year, and so old 3-9 came in a good way.
Nice.
Oh yeah,
nice. So, Chuck, where can people find you if they listen to you here and they want to know more about the dude that is Chuck Nasty? Where can they find you?
There's a few places. Well, let's see. We'll start with I have my band, Bastard Sons of a Judas Goat. We're a two-piece sludge, doom, occasionally noise, a little bit of hint of hardcore and grindcore mixed in. We're actually recording our new album right now. We're almost done with it, and it should be out in the next couple of months. But you can find us on there's cool video clips, live stuff on YouTube. Go to our Facebook page. There's a lot of cool video clips and stuff on there from shows and stuff. And then also you can find out some of the dates for some of our upcoming shows that are coming up. We got four booked as of right now. We're not doing too many shows this year, just because we're trying to focus on a lot more recordings that need to get done.
Okay.
But yeah, Facebook, Bandcamp, Spotify for all that stuff. So if you're a fan of the kind of music that I told you we do, check us out. Let us know how you feel about it, whatever. And then podcast wise, you got my show Nasty Nation, which is I interview people sometimes. Sometimes it's just me, just ranting and raving. And then you have Graveyard Talk, which is me and my buddy Whitman. Which you can catch him on Whitman Photography, Instagram, Facebook, places like that. And we talk about horror and all that kind of that stuff. And those two are just audio as of right now. One thing we're going to work on this year is bringing that a little bit more to the masses. And we're working on getting some of those episodes put on some kind of format, probably put it on YouTube and then start filming some stuff video wise a lot more. That's still in the works though.
Nice.
But that's all you can find both those shows on Spotify. Just look up Nasty Nation. Both shows are on there. Either you'll say NN or GT. And the reason for that is I started doing Nasty Nation back when I restarted it, right when shutdown, when COVID was all that, and Women and I started doing these shows, and so we just left it on that same platform. So so that's all on Spotify. Anchor is where we record it from, so you can go on there as well. Drop us a line. You can leave us messages and shit. We'll play them on the show, whatever. But you can find us on Graveyard Talk and Nasty Nation. Both those are on Facebook as well. And then you have Video Store Clerks, which is on at usually 11 p.m. on Wednesday nights, 11 p.m. Eastern time. But tomorrow and the next week, it's going to be at 10 because of one of our guys has some work things going on. So we're going to be jumping an hour early, but only for a couple of weeks. Okay. And you can find that stuff. That's the audio that's on Spotify. You can go on YouTube. It's on there. Facebook. All that stuff. We go live, so you can come on and comment and all that fun shit. That's about it. I also will say, Tales from the Podcast I was a part of for over a year now, and recently done due to some scheduling and some things that I have to get taken care of and whatnot. I've actually stepped back from Tales of the Podcast. Right. But please, by all means, go check out JB on Tales of the Podcast. I'll be on there on occasions as a guest and whatnot. You can go to talesofthepodcast.com and find all about the podcast on there. And you can also buy the comic book that we did, Tales of Shock and Terror. And that's on there and stuff. So you go get that, check that out, because they're putting out a new comic before too long. So please, by all means, go and support those guys. Still love them. But besides that, that's and also just to throw this out, I've been going through, and I've actually got someone editing my one of my novels, so I can get that fucking shit out this year. It's called House of Flesh, and I'm putting it out some way, shape, or form. That's one of the main goals. And I actually just started, while I'm waiting for that one to be done, I actually started a new novel. And the only thing I can tell you about that one, it involves a restaurant, cannibals, and weird fucked up monsters. So yeah, okay. So there's that. And if you want to be my friend, you can also just hit me up on Facebook if you know my name. If not, hit me up on Nasty Nation.
And I'll include links to all of that stuff Chuck just read down in the show notes. You can go find him there. And you know what? After all that, you know where to find Skewered Universe. If you're listening, you found us. But all my stuff will be in the notes. But more importantly, check out the stuff Chuck mentioned. Support him. Support his band. Do all that stuff.
Hey, support Skewered as well, man. Come on, man.
Hey, support us. We're independent podcasters out here, man. We don't have contracts like Joe Rogan and from Spotify and shit. You know,
unless you want to give it to us. You want to give us something like that.
You want to give me some money? I'll gladly take it.
Fuck yeah.
I came up listening to podcasts in the early days when people were just doing it out of their family rooms, you know. So that's kind of why I do it the way I do it. You know, low budget, try and get as good a quality as I can, and you know, talk about whatever the fuck I want to talk about.
Yeah, man, I totally get that. I always, my dad was a DJ in college. I grew up listening to a lot of his tapes. Mm-hmm. He'd always be listening to them, and Pump Up the Volume. I don't know if you remember that movie, you know, with Christian Slater. Yeah, that was a big influence on me to do it. So I like the aspect of keeping some things audio, because of that Howard Stern, Harry Hardcock mentality.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, I was a huge Howard Stern fan growing up, so that's kind of why I just grabbed that. Anytime somebody does "Hey Now," I know exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, and if you don't know, then you don't know.
You're on the other side, brother. You're on the other side if you don't know.
Yeah. Oh man, this was a fucking blast having you on. We're definitely gonna have you on again. You know, if you're ever looking for somebody to show up on your end for something, you know, whatever you got going on your end, you know, I'm always down to jump over to your side too.
I'm already been thinking on it. Don't worry, I'll be hitting you up.
All right, yeah, man. And you got an open invite to come back. I will let you know when there's something interesting coming. But as far as the January is for Giallo series, which I'm keeping around. If anyone doesn't like it, well, it's my show. Fuck you.
Exactly.
You're gonna come back. We're gonna do more of this next year for January for sure.
Hey man, I look forward to it.
We're gonna have you back a lot sooner than that, and who knows, I may show up at your doorstep at one of your podcasts sooner than later.
Hell yeah, brother! I really appreciate you having me on, man. This has been a lot of fun. I'm always down to talk horror, especially when it involves old Argento.
Hey man, of course, it was a chance meeting. You know, Mars got me in touch with JB, which put me in touch with you. Where we just all kind of clicked and hit it off. So it's been nice, man. It's been nice to make a new friend in this podcasting community because. I actually think some of us in the podcasting community, this podcasting community, horror podcasting, are some of the better people out there.
I highly agree with you on that.
Don't get me wrong, we've got a few assholes in the mix, but we try to weed them out.
Right. There's assholes and there's fucking assholes. I'm just an asshole, so I'm cool to have around.
Yeah, I have my asshole tendencies too, so. That being said, Chuck, again, thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun talking opera and everything else horror with you.
Yeah, brother.
And that being said, the rest of you guys, why don't you just enjoy that universe that's just a bit skewered?